So in this video, I'm going to look at how we can get information out of our JSON object response. I've re-enabled my Wi-Fi, and I'm just going to run my program again. And we'll let that information come up in the debug console. Alright, so we've got our URL here and we've got our JSON object. And so over here in our onResponse callback, we have access to a response object. And with that object, we have available a number of helper methods, and luckily, because we don't have any level of nested JSON objects, we don't have to use something like get JSON object to retrieve a nested JSON object. That makes things a little bit more complex. So the information that we want to get is under the key message and also under the key status. So you can see here with our JSON we have some key value pairs, and they define, so we've got message and then the actual URL data, and we've got status and then the actual message status. So this information, it's string data, so what we can do is we can get that string information. And so what we can do is get the URL like that, and we can create a little object called URL like that. And why is this complaining? Oh, and we have to handle this exception. So we'll handle that exception in a minute. We can also get the status, and we can again use the get string method, and we'll get the string behind the status key. And so then we can use those to, I suppose, clean up our system log a little bit. If we had a more complicated application, what we could do is we could extract these different fields and then put them into different widgets on screen. So we can use our logger again, and we can create a URL key, and then use the URL variable that we just created, and we can do the same thing with the status field as well, just like that. And you can see here that our code has got some problems. So you can see here that we've got this issue, unhandled exception, and so that's just if we experience some kind of parsing exception when we parse these JSON objects. So I'm just going to surround this code with a try catch block, and we can actually do the same thing over here for the status as well. So we'll put that inside the try catch block as well. We'll initialize this to null, and then we'll assign this value here. So if there's any kind of JSON parsing error, which can happen sometimes if a web service is badly behaved, then that's going to be handled in our little event handler here. So this is a very simple event handler. If we had an actual real application, we might like to interpret this message and perhaps put it into a toast message or into a user widget. So we can run our application again and see what comes up in the system log. Okay, and you can see here that we've been able to successfully extract the URL um, into its own little variable, into its own little object, and also the status into its own little object as well, and to print that out separately. So in a lot of situations, the JSON object request and JSON object response from an API is a lot more complicated, but this little tutorial, this just covers the basics. So that's the end of this little video series, and if you have any questions, please post a comment.